Hi, you're listening to Childless and Moving Onward. This is the place where we talk about thriving in life when you're a woman who is childless, not by choice, regardless of the road that brought you to childlessness. Hi, and welcome to an episode of Childless and Moving Onward. I'm Gail Miller, your host. I'm a physician, a speaker, and a life coach, and I empower women who are childless not by choice to feel whole again, to live fulfilling lives. And today I'm thrilled to have a guest on, Maureen Benkovich, and we are going to be talking about an important topic that is common among women who are childless not by choice, and that is when we find ways to try to soothe ourselves, and they're not the healthiest of ways and not the ways that really fit into the way we want to live our lives. So I'm going to let you, Maureen, tell us about yourself.
Okay. Hi, Gail. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I started following you and heard your message, and we have a lot in common. And I wanted to reach out because it's been sort of my passion since I've changed my life and understanding the role of alcohol and how it was really holding me back from processing my grief. Now I help other women who are drinking more than they want to. And especially I have a heart for women who are struggling with being childless, not by choice, and using alcohol to numb or hide, how sad they really are. So I have a business now called Sober Fit Chick Coaching. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, a background. I used to be a trainer, personal trainer. And before that, I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. I worked for Eli Lilly and I sold antidepressants. So as you know, as a doctor, all the pharmaceutical reps are trained in whatever area the drug they are that is selling. So I learned quite a bit about depression. And I was also suffering from depression at the same time. So learning about it from both sides. And then in the early 90s, my husband and I got married in 92 and fully expected to have children. He comes from a large family. I come from the last of 5 kids. Never thought that would be an issue. And actually, our first year into marriage, I got pregnant right away. Figured, okay, here we go, on track, and then had my first miscarriage and was just shocked, floored. No one in my family had that. And again, this is in the early 90s, so there really wasn't a lot of support around this. But I had had endometriosis, so my gynecologist had advised me to go ahead and start infertility treatments. So we went to a clinic here around the DC area and had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I know you're familiar. Yeah. Feel like a pin cushion, a little bit of a science experiment. Lots of things that happened in there were just pretty heartless, insensitive. But we were determined, like most couples are who want to have children. It was very expensive in our young marriage, very heartbreaking. So I went on to have successive miscarriages. And the whole process of eggs getting fertilized, watching to see what lasts, implanting what's left. Does that last? It was just horrible. So then after several rounds and a couple of years and a lot of money, I was just done. It was just taking me down as a person and affecting our marriage, which I think happens a lot too in many couples going through infertility. But at the same time, we had joined a church, and after our last round of infertility treatments, a couple came to our pastor and said, "Look, our granddaughter actually is pregnant, and she wants to adopt the baby, and we want to do it through the church." So naturally, they came to us, and I thought, well, this must be it. Baby on the doorstep. This are all the reasons why I've gone through all of this pain. And kicker was she was going to have the baby in 3 weeks. And so we had to decide fast. And so this little girl and her grandparents wanted us to write a letter. So we did. And there were some other couples she was interviewing, and she chose us. So we were going to go ahead with it, and the church pitched in, and we had like baby stuff for the baby room, and we were going to all of a sudden become parents in 3 weeks. But I thought, well, surely this is why I've gone through all this pain. And then about a week before the adoption was supposed to happen, her grandparents decided they wanted to raise the child, and they backed out of everything. It was very cold. They were like, do not contact us. Do not try to contact our granddaughter. Cease and desist, or we'll take legal action. It was really strange. And that was, I got to tell you, that was harder than any miscarriage. And then giving everything back to all the lovely people at church who had pitched in and all the baby stuff. It was just brutal. And in the meantime, all of my very best friends are building their families. Some of them are on baby number 2. And so I'm really struggling with, like, I want to be happy for them. How do I handle this? They don't know how to react around me. You could feel the tension. You could cut it with a knife. And so somewhere subconsciously, I started to sort of develop this persona as the party girl. Like, well, hey, guess what? When you get a babysitter and you can go out on the weekends, look at me. I'm fine. I'm great. Um, and I would, really leaned into that personality. Like, I'll be your crazy friend. Oh, I'm fine without kids. But I was really in a lot of pain. And I was very much hiding behind that party girl persona. And it went on for years because, as you know, the pain continues. It's with every transition your friends and children go through, you go through the loss again of kindergarten, school pictures, Christmases, all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the people around you can't possibly understand how it just hits you like a Mack truck with every transition. And I looked around me and there really wasn't anybody like me. And I was watching your TEDx talk, people being so positive, like, well, buck up, or, God has a reason for this, or something will work out, or take my children for the weekend. Then you won't want any, right? Do you love that one?
Oh, love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just reeling, and I was a personal trainer at the time, like I told you. So this other thing was going on where I was really starting to live out of alignment with myself, as here I am coaching mostly women how to take care of themselves, eat right, work out. And yet I'm really binge drinking on the weekends. And so I knew I was living a very incongruent lifestyle, but I was just in so much pain. And on the weekends, when I got with all my friends and we're all sitting around the table, what's the icebreaker? What's the icebreaker?
Talking about your kids.
Talking about your kids. And I would ask all the polite questions, the first 45 minutes. And then I'd be like, martini, please. Maybe 2, maybe 3. And that started to become a pattern. And it was not conscious, right, that I was doing this.
Yeah.
The problem is you're drinking an addictive substance. Alcohol is a drug. And, you all just heard the Surgeon General report that's just come out. But we've known this information for a while, that there is no safe or healthy recommended intake of alcohol. I mean, in 2018, it came out in the medical journal, in the Lancet, very prestigious medical journal, as you would know, that fact. But it's taken this long for it to really, be stated, because there's a powerful alcohol industry and lobby behind all this. But all that to say, I'm drinking this toxic substance that is a drug. Whenever you combine a drug, a toxic substance, with trauma, stress, depression, or even just the way you transition every day from work to home, you start to develop these neural pathways. The brain, as you know, starts releasing dopamine to motivate you to drink. So when I would feel badly at a dinner, when everybody started talking about their kids, I got this dopamine release, like, do that thing that you did before that made you feel good. And so I would. But the problem is, eventually I started developing, I didn't have an off switch, because it's progressive when you drink.
Yeah.
Now, what I want to really state is I did not look like a person that you would consider someone who needed to stop drinking. We've all been taught that unless you hit rock bottom or need medical intervention, why should you reevaluate your relationship with alcohol? Everybody's drinking, right? But now, really, the terms alcoholic, alcohol use disorder are more outdated. Now there's a term, and actually it's a nutritional term, called gray area drinking. And in 2010, the American Dietary Guidelines said, look, we're going to reevaluate the guidelines and we can no longer ignore this substance that, 95% of the population is consuming caloric intake. We have to look at it as far as longevity, healthcare, dementia, how it's affecting people and their caloric intake. So they came up with the term that it's not going to be people who drink 2 or fewer, and fewer being the key word there, 2 or fewer drinks per week, or the people at the other end of the spectrum who are what we would call rock bottom, who need medical intervention, have cirrhosis of the liver, that kind of thing. It's going to be all the people in the gray. So the term is actually a nutritional term, gray area drinking. And that's where I fell in because I worked out, I took care of myself, I ran a business, I looked very healthy, but I was worried about my own drinking. I knew on a deeper level in my bones that what I was doing was hurting me. It was increasing my depression and anxiety. I could feel it after a weekend of drinking. I'd be down for a couple of days. And I was already a person who suffered with depression, drinking a depressant on a regular basis. But I wasn't putting all this together until I learned all about it, right?
Yeah.
So I was a gray area drinker for years. And finally, it got to the point where my depression got pretty dark. And I was still struggling always around being childless, holidays, my parents never being grandparents, all of that stuff. I couldn't get out of the loop. And what I didn't realize was alcohol was keeping me stuck in my grief. I wasn't moving through my grief. I wasn't processing it. I would just stay stuck. And so when I started to really research it, being a former pharmaceutical rep, I thought, I got to look something up here. And I started looking up alcohol-induced depression, alcohol-induced anxiety. And sure enough, there's reams of information on the connection. And while I was doing that, the pop-ups on your computer when you're Googling, am I an alcoholic? Do I have a drinking problem? I would see these things come up for coaching. And this is kind of new in the last 12 years with this sober curiosity movement. And I thought, well, coaching makes sense to me. I couldn't relate personally to the 12-step program, but that's all we've ever known. That's all we ever thought was out there. But coaching, well, I've always been a coach, a fitness coach, a health trainer, and I thought, well, that makes sense. So I signed up for a coaching program. And it didn't take long because once I started to understand the science, the neurobiology, how alcohol affects my physiology, and not that I'm powerless or have a disease or have to label myself. For me personally, I'm going to state that it didn't work for me, but understanding well, wait a minute, I can change my brain chemistry back. I can, carve out new neural pathways where I don't drink when I'm sad or stressed, where I learn how to sit in my difficult emotions and feel all the feelings, right? Because I'm still going to have stress and hardness and sadness and grief. That doesn't go away. But learning that I didn't have to numb it and learning other healthy things other than, the bakery or the bar, other than sugar and alcohol. There's so many other resources out there. So it didn't take me long when I was in my own coaching program. About 2 months in, I was like, yeah, I'm done drinking. This is toxin. It's hurting me. And then everything opened up for me. It was like my world changed. And I started looking around for support. And the first thing I found was the book by Jody Day. Have you read that, Living the Life Unexpected?
Yeah. Yep.
So she was the first person I heard that term, childless, not by choice. And did that blow you? The first time I heard that term? Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, that's me.
Yeah.
I never had a way to describe myself to people.
Yeah.
And that in itself was mind blowing, but I couldn't be open to all that until I stopped drinking. And so when I saw that, and then from there, I found the Childless Collective, which is a group Jody Day started, and then Katie Seppi took it over. It's out of the UK. And the first time I got on a Zoom call with 6 other women who were just like me, I couldn't believe it. I didn't have to be careful with my words or buffer my conversation, or we all could go 5 levels deep right away because we understood the difficulties of being in a world that is child centric.
Yeah.
So finally, I was able to get the support that I needed, and recognizing the connection to how my own drinking was holding me back from my own healing. I knew that I wanted to now reach out and help other women, people struggling with alcohol in general, who are gray area drinkers. And gray area drinkers, the other characteristic to know is they stop at times. They
Okay.
stop and start, but they can't stay stopped. So I don't work with people who cannot stop, right? That is medical intervention. That is
Right.
rehab. That's a different thing. I work with people like me who stop and start, but just can't stay stopped. And
Okay.
so that's kind of where I work. And especially, I love to help women who are struggling to find healing and do it in healthy ways.
That is awesome. Your story,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Not awesome that you went through that,
Oh, I know.
of course, but just that you got to this place where when you recognized what this was doing to you before you got to that point of
Yes.
needing rehab, and then to be able to not just turn your life around, but be able to now offer hope and help to other women. I think
Yes.
that's just amazing. So thank you. And thank you for sharing that. Even when we're public about our stories, there are sometimes still parts of our stories that we don't want to share, that we don't share. So I appreciate it, any sharing, because
Hmm.
it's vulnerable. It's a vulnerable position to be in. Even
Yeah.
when you are comfortable sharing your story, it's still, there's a vulnerability there. So thank you.
Well, Brene Brown, who is a shame
Yeah.
researcher, always says
Yeah.
vulnerability kills shame. And I really leaned into that because I spent years being in shame, like somehow it was my fault, like I was
Yeah.
defective. And
Yeah.
and that was another reason I drank, because I just didn't like this shameful feeling. And so when I heard that from her, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start being honest with myself and other people. And I was surprised at how that really does help. So I know
Yeah.
now, for me to share, maybe someone here is going to listen and hear this and go, wow, I feel that way too. And I am drinking more than I want to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. Um, when you were describing, you're sitting there at the table with all
Yeah.
of your friends, and it's like, okay, and you're smiling and you're listening and you're asking
Yeah.
questions too. Otherwise, you don't participate in the conversation, right? Because you can't
Hmm.
talk about your kids. And then when I'll have a martini. For me, it was okay. I'll have another side of fries. Like that's
Right.
my like. Well, I don't know how you trained in life coaching, but the first program that I did was we talk about buffering
Hmm.
and making those uncomfortable, painful feelings go away. They don't really go away. It's very
Yes.
temporary. And so we all have our different buffers, and alcohol is one of them. And for
Yeah.
me, it's food.
That's why I say the bakery or the
Yeah.
bar, because,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, as you know, sugar and alcohol run the same reward pathway in the
Yep.
brain. So they're very similar.
Yeah.
We're looking for that instant feel good, and we do get that rush, but then it gets us on the back end because alcohol ends up depleting the very feel good neurotransmitters that we need, the GABA, the
Yeah.
serotonin, the acetylcholine, and the dopamine.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you came to this realization, what steps did you take to kind of move, the
Hmm.
neuroplasticity? What did you do? What steps did you take to engage that neuroplasticity?
Well, through coaching, I learned, first of all, self compassion is huge. Curiosity and self compassion. So to know that it's not my fault. A, it wasn't my fault that I couldn't have children.
Yeah.
B, that it's not my fault that I'm drinking more than I want to. It is brain chemistry, it's neurobiology, but it's my responsibility. And so once I learned the truth, I could make an informed decision. Well, what do I want to do now? Which direction am I going to go? Am I going to keep drinking and keep, deregulating my central nervous system, my stress response, get deeper and deeper into depression and anxiety, or am I going to make a change? and lean into all these other tools that now help me. Gratitude, the science of gratitude, that helps with neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Breath work. We have this natural ability to tap into this God given ability for breath work. And some of those techniques, like the 478, are supposed to be as effective as taking a Xanax. So learning to do that. The biggest thing is you have to learn self compassion and to slow down, to pause and be like, wait, why do I want to have this drink right now? What void am I trying to fill?
Yeah.
Am I sad? Am I hurting? Maybe instead of me going to these dinners with all these women, maybe I don't go. Maybe I say no sometimes. That's the self compassion piece. Like, I don't have to, if I don't feel up to it, I don't have to go.
Yeah.
So it sounds simple, but that's huge. That self compassion piece.
It does. Isn't it amazing though? Like when you're in the midst of this and you're learning this and you're like, but this is so simple, but it's not. And it had such significant effect and such significant impact on our thoughts and on
Hmm.
our feelings and on our behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
interesting thing is so I have two trainings, and the first one is more cognitive and behavioral certification, which is very important. The second one is gray area drinking training. Jolene Park, who also gave a TED talk
Okay.
on gray area drinking, and I'm now in her master coaching group. And it's so fascinating because changing a habit is 80% physiology, 20% emotions and behaviors. So the physiology happens first. We walk into a room, we start feeling uncomfortable, we start thinking about drinking. It happens so fast on a micro level. So we need to address the physiology and there's a whole category, 7 categories I go through in my coaching. Um, sleep schedules, nutrition. Are they getting enough protein, which are the building blocks of neurotransmitters, the amino acids? Again, it sounds simple, but a lot of times when we're so sad and depressed, we don't take care of ourselves. We don't do
Right.
these things. Getting outside, movement, community. I isolated a lot because I didn't want people to see how sad I was. And
Yeah.
then I'd show up like the party girl on the weekends and then I'd isolate again, you know?
Yeah.
So there's just a lot. So individually, I get to know somebody. We work through what categories they might be missing or things they haven't tried. And we go through this trial and error process and we build their toolkit while they're taking a 30-day break from alcohol with me. Because you can do all these things, but if you're still drinking, you're not going to notice if they're really helping. So it's a very structured kind of coaching program that I take people through because we need the accountability. If you're drinking, again, an addictive substance, a toxin on a regular basis, you're going to need to work with somebody to have that accountability and that reinforcement. And I'm constantly reminding people to be compassionate with themselves because we're all so hard on ourselves.
Yeah. Women especially.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious if when you talk about, being the party girl, like what I envision is like I see it as that fake smile,
Yes.
that, happiness that we put on. In part, it's because, at least for me and from what I've heard from other women, it's because others
Hmm.
are uncomfortable with our childlessness and our
Exactly.
grief. And so we want to make everybody else comfortable, right? We don't want to leave them uncomfortable because we have pain. And,
Yes.
right? And then the other part is because we feel like if we're sad, if we're telling people, yeah, I'm not the happy party girl, we're kind of giving life to the stigma,
Yeah.
to the shame
Yeah,
that
we're giving
shouldn't
it
be there.
power. We're giving
Right.
it power. And also most people do not know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
And so they're going to say something because they're uncomfortable with your pain and they don't know what to say. So they're going to say one of those things like it'll work out, it all happened for a reason. And really just to learn to sit with somebody and go, yeah, that really sucks. I am so sorry. And I don't know what you're feeling, but I can sit with you.
Yes. Yeah. I wish more people knew that
Yeah.
instead of oh, take my kids for the weekend and you'll see it's not such a, yeah. Yeah. So how has this what you've been through and where you've gotten, how has that affected you in terms of how you see yourself as a woman who's childless, not by choice?
Yeah. Um, that's such a big question. It keeps evolving too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, once I was able to change my own life and change my drinking habits, I immediately wanted to help others. And so the purpose, I felt very without purpose because I had believed that unless I could have a child, then what was my purpose here? I literally would say those kind of things like, well, why am I here?
Yeah.
Like there was that, like I couldn't do anything else. And I was believing that. So the things we say to ourselves and others are very important. I talk about self-talk a lot with clients. So then I was like, okay, I do believe God allowed me to go through this pain. I'm not saying like, that's why this all happened, but I can now take this and reach out and help others on these two fronts, alcohol and being childless, not by choice. And that has given me such a passion to do all kinds of things I never thought I'd do. Have a podcast. We were talking about the technical stuff beforehand.
Yeah.
Um, you know, do public speaking, put myself out there. But when you see somebody have an aha moment or like, oh, you understand me, that I can only explain and you know how it makes you feel that this is why you're here. This is what you're meant to do to help others.
Yeah.
So it's given me a purpose, out of my pain. I could choose to say in it, drowning in it, or turn it around and try to help others too come through the other side, move through the grief and not stay stuck.
Yeah. So, how did this affect your relationship with your friends who, you used to be the party girl and and
Yeah,
that
they were shocked. Uh, yeah, they were shocked because I mean, many people with depression or struggling with something they're hiding are really good at it. And so when I finally started coming out and saying, look, I'm really struggling. I'm not going to be joining you guys on the weekends for a while. I'm going to actually take a break from drinking and probably stop. You get the usual responses, whether you're a childless, not by choice woman or not. You get the usual, like, why? You don't have a problem. You just like to have fun. Come on. Don't worry about you're being too hard on yourself. And for years, that's all I needed to hear. Be like, well, okay, but I knew on the inside, it was killing me, literally. And what I've learned, come to learn, and I share with my clients too, is that's something called the mirror effect, the mirror. So imagine a hand mirror. The moment I say to you, well, I'm not going to drink anymore. It's not working for me anymore. They see a mirror and they see themselves. So any response that they then start saying to you is not about you. It like, you're not even there anymore. It's like, oh no, what does this mean for me? Maureen's no longer drinking. She's my drinking buddy. And is she going to want me to drink less? And is she judging me? Is she watching how much I drink? And so it's just a very subconscious thing that happens so fast. But when you can learn again to identify that, you're like, I know what's going on here. This isn't about me. She is working her own stuff out. And I just need to stay in my lane because I know this is what I need to do for me.
yeah.
But it was a big shocker. And I did have some people that I don't hang out with anymore. They were clearly my drinking buddies.
Yeah.
And I get it. When I was drinking, I wanted to be with people who drank like I did. You typically surround yourself with people who drink like you did.
Yeah.
And so it's just a natural part of the transition. But I've met so many other interesting people. Like I get to meet you, right? We get to do this. I've joined this whole coaching group, business coaching group. I have women friends all around the world now. So again, so many other opportunities opened up once I let go of that really very small life that was keeping me very stuck. And now so many things have opened up. But you do have friendships that will change. You have others where the friends are very supportive and they're still with me. And even our relationships are much better because now I'm really connecting with you. Like when we're together, I'm actually focused on you. I'm not focused on when I'm going to get the next drink. My prefrontal cortex doesn't go offline. I'm actually remembering conversations, having genuine connection. It's so much better. But I wouldn't have believed it when I was drinking. If someone said, look, it's so much better when you're not drinking, I'd be like, yeah, right. But now it really is. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, do you have something that, you know, an offer that some of my audience might be interested in?
Yeah. So first of all, this is, not like selling a piece of clothing or something, right? This is know, like, and trust. And so I completely understand people wanting to have some sort of a phone call with me where we can talk and you can hear my voice and we can share our stories. It's confidential, it's free. So it's a free discovery call. And I gave you the link for that. And there's no pressure. That's not my jam is to pressure you. It's just let's talk, let's see if we connect, let's see if I can help you and we're a good fit. And then I have other things I can offer. I have a 6-week alcohol reset video course. And I have 2 versions. Right now, I'm running a group right now. So it's coach led. And we meet once a week virtually, all of us on a Zoom call. And then they go through the video course every day. It's little bite sized bits of information from me, which helps to rewire your brain. It's about the brain chemistry, it's about the physiology. And you learn all kinds of things about alcohol and how you're using it, all the jobs you gave it, all kinds of interesting things. So 6 weeks is a good time period for you to just start feeling the benefits, better sleep, better gut health, better, mental health, less anxiety. And then you can take it from there if you want to continue on. So the 6-week alcohol reset is a great place to start. I also have a self-led version if you are a person who wants to go through it on your own. And I believe I gave you the link for that.
Okay.
And anybody can check out my website at soberfitchick.com. I talk about my story on there, my story of infertility and being childless, not by choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So you heard it. I will post the links for everything in the show notes. So is there an email address that people can reach you at?
Yeah, my email is my first name, Maureen, Maureen, at soberfitchick.com.
Okay.
I'm on Instagram, soberfitchick LLC. I had to tag that on there because someone else had soberfitchick.
Okay.
And same with my Facebook, soberfitchick LLC. I also have a podcast called Sober Fit Life. So again, if you want to hear more about what I do, my story, I bring on other people, some clients who I've worked with. I have doctors come on, experts, health, physical fitness experts who talk about how alcohol really negatively impacts us in so many ways. So again, you can listen to that and get to know me a little better. And if you feel like reaching out, I'm here because I know it takes a while sometimes to reach out about something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It takes kind of a few times, several times of hearing someone, reading about them
Yeah.
to feel comfortable that, okay, this might be a good fit. And then to feel that kind of, okay, I can reach out now because
Yeah.
there's stigma with childlessness and there's stigma to drinking.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I've also written a chapter in the Life Coaches Toolkit. It's on Amazon. You can read it, but my chapter is specifically about the role of alcohol in anxiety and depression. And so
Okay.
you can start to understand how it's really hurting you in that way so much.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you for sharing your story and showing my audience that it can be done
Yes.
and talking about it can be transformative, and that you're not alone. So
Yeah.
thank you. And
Thank
I'm
you, Gail,
really,
for the work you do and your
oh,
message too. I love what you're putting out there. Thank you.
thank you. So, all right. Well, that is it for today. And I will be back with you next week. I'm so glad you joined me. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked it, you can find more tips, insight, and support in a private space with other women who are like you, so they get you. You can do that by joining my free Facebook group, When Being Childless Isn't by Choice. Join us by clicking on the link in the show notes. You can also stay up to date with me on Instagram at Childless Path Onward and Facebook and YouTube at Path Onward. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.